The dust rose in angry swirls around the wagon wheels as they rolled into Redemption Creek, Arizona territory in the scorching summer of 1872. Sarah Catherine Murphy pressed her face against the rough wooden slats, watching the ramshackle town materialize through the haze like a mirage that refused to disappear. At 19 years old, with cornflower blue eyes and hair the color of prairie wheat, she had once dreamed of attending a teaching college back east. Now, those dreams lay buried beneath the red Arizona dirt alongside her father. "We're here," her stepmother Beatrice announced flatly, her thin lips pressed into their perpetual expression of displeasure. "Try not to embarrass us, Sarah. God knows we've sacrificed enough for you." Sarah bit back the retort that threatened to escape her lips. She'd learned long ago that silence was safer around Beatrice and her two daughters, Cordelia and Margaret. The three of them had made Sarah's life a living hell since her father, James Murphy, had married Beatrice 5 years ago in a moment of weakness and loneliness after Sarah's mother died of consumption. The wagon lurched to a stop outside the Redemption Creek trading post, and Sarah's heart sank as she took in the shabby buildings that lined the single dirt street. Paint peeled from warped wooden facades. The saloon's batwing doors hung crooked on their hinges. A few scraggly chickens pecked listlessly in the dust, and the only other signs of life were a mangy dog sleeping in the shade, and 3 men in dusty clothes eyeing their wagon with undisguised interest. This was to be her new home, her prison. Her father had died 3 months ago when his horse threw him during a storm. In his will, he'd left everything to Beatrice, the small Missouri farm, what little savings he had, and even, it seemed, authority over Sarah's future. Within a week of the funeral, Beatrice had announced they were moving west to Arizona territory, where her brother Silas owned a trading post. "A fresh start," Beatrice had declared, "and perhaps we'll finally find a way to get you off our hands, Sarah. Lord knows you eat more than you're worth." Now, as Uncle Silas emerged from the trading post, a rotund man with a handlebar mustache stained yellow from tobacco, Sarah felt the walls of her future closing in. "Beatrice! Girls!" Silas called out, his voice booming. His eyes barely grazed over Sarah as if she were part of the wagon's cargo rather than a person. "Welcome to Redemption Creek. Come inside. Come inside. We've got much to discuss." The interior of the trading post smelled of leather, tobacco, and something else Sarah couldn't quite identify, a scent that spoke of wild spaces and danger. The shelves were stocked with everything from flour sacks to rifles, blankets to whiskey bottles. A few Apache blankets hung on the far wall, their geometric patterns bright against the dull wooden planks. As Sarah helped unload their meager belongings, she overheard Beatrice and Silas speaking in low, urgent tones. "Can't keep her forever, Bea. She needs to earn her keep or find a husband." "That's precisely why I've come, Silas. In Missouri, she had no prospects. Here, well, I've heard men are desperate for wives." Sarah's blood ran cold. She knew Beatrice had never loved her, but to speak of her like livestock at market. That night, sleeping on a thin pallet behind a curtain in the trading post's back room, Sarah lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the frontier. Distant coyote howls, the creaking of buildings settling in the cooling night air, and occasional bursts of laughter or gunfire from the saloon down the street. She thought of her father, of his gentle hands and kind eyes, and wondered how everything had gone so terribly wrong. She didn't know it then, but her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. 3 weeks passed in a blur of back-breaking work. Sarah swept floors, inventoried stock, hauled water from the creek, and cooked meals for Beatrice's family while Cordelia and Margaret lounged about in their Sunday dresses, complaining about the heat and the primitive conditions. Redemption Creek was a town on the edge of nowhere, populated by prospectors, ranchers, drifters, and those running from something or someone. The nearby Fort Breckenridge offered some protection, but tensions with the Apache had been running high for months. Settlers kept pushing into traditional hunting grounds. Miners defiled sacred sites, and the government's promises meant nothing. Sarah learned all this from listening to the customers who came through the trading post. She learned to identify the different groups, the hardened cavalry officers with their brass buttons and air of superiority, the rough prospectors with gold fever in their eyes, the ranchers whose hands bore the marks of honest labor, and occasionally Apache traders who would come to barter deer hides and baskets for metal tools and cloth. It was these last visitors who fascinated Sarah most. The townspeople spoke of the Apache with a mixture of fear and contempt, calling them savages and worse. But when Sarah saw them in the trading post, she saw proud men with intelligent eyes, moving with a grace and dignity that most of the white settlers lacked. They spoke little, conducted their business, and left. Uncle Silas treated them fairly, she noticed, not out of any moral conviction, but because it was good for business. A cheat gets scalped, he'd say with a laugh. An honest trader gets rich. On a Thursday afternoon in late July, everything changed. Sarah was in the back room, mending a tear in one of Cordelia's petticoats, work that Cordelia herself refused to do, when she heard shouting from the street. She rushed to the window and saw people running, pointing toward the eastern hills. "Apache!" someone screamed. "Apache raiders!" The sound of gunfire cracked through the air. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest as she watched a group of Apache warriors on horseback thunder down the main street, not attacking, but chasing something or someone. The townspeople scattered like quail, diving into buildings and behind water troughs. But then Sarah saw what the warriors were actually pursuing. A group of white men on horses, riding hard for the fort. The white men were shooting back wildly, but the Apache moved with purposeful coordination, driving them like cattle. "Get inside!" Uncle Silas roared, pulling Sarah away from the window. "Everyone to the cellar now!" They huddled in the dark, dusty cellar while chaos erupted above. The gunfire grew more intense, then gradually faded. After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, an eerie silence fell over the town. When they finally emerged, they found the street transformed. 4 white men lay dead in the dust, the ones the Apache had been chasing. Sarah would later learn they were claim jumpers who had murdered an Apache family at their camp and stolen their horses. The Apache had simply been delivering justice, but the townspeople saw only dead white men and Apache warriors. "This means war," Sheriff Coleman declared, his face red with rage. "Those savages will pay for this." Colonel Warren from Fort Breckenridge rode into town within the hour, his cavalry troop clattering behind him. Sarah watched from the trading post doorway as he surveyed the scene with cold blue eyes. "Gentlemen," he announced to the gathered crowd, "I'm declaring martial law in Redemption Creek until this situation is resolved. No one enters or leaves without my permission. We'll teach these Apache the price of defying the United States government." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about what she'd seen, how the Apache had only killed the men who had murdered their people, how the townspeople had immediately labeled them savages, how Colonel Warren spoke of teaching them a lesson as if they were children rather than people defending their own. She wondered if anyone else had noticed the truth of what had happened. Someone had, but Sarah wouldn't know that until much later. In the weeks that followed the raid, fear gripped Redemption Creek like a fever. Ranchers abandoned their outlying homesteads and crowded into town. The cavalry increased its patrols, and Colonel Warren began demanding supplies from the trading post, demands that Uncle Silas could hardly refuse, but which left his inventory depleted and his profits minimal. "Highway robbery," Silas muttered one evening, tallying his losses. "That colonel's bleeding me dry." Beatrice had her own concerns. "We need to think practically, Silas. We have 3 unmarried girls to feed, and these military rations you're giving away were supposed to help us get established." 3 girls? Silas looked confused. "Oh, you mean Sarah too?" He said her name like an afterthought. Sarah, washing dishes in the back, felt the familiar sting of being unwanted. "I've been making inquiries," Beatrice continued, lowering her voice. Sarah had to strain to hear. "Thomas Wardle has shown interest." Sarah's hands froze in the dishwater. Thomas Wardle owned the Lucky Strike Saloon and had a reputation for cruelty. He'd buried 3 wives already, all under suspicious circumstances. The man was 60 if he was a day, with tobacco-stained teeth and hands that wandered too freely when women passed by. That would solve a problem, Silas agreed. She's damaged goods, Silas. Her father left her nothing but that stubborn independence. Wardle's willing to overlook her faults. Sarah's vision swam. She gripped the edge of the basin, fighting waves of nausea. They were actually discussing selling her to Thomas Wardle like she was a horse at auction. Before she could formulate a plan, to run away, to hide, to do something, the trading post door burst open. Colonel Warren strode in, his face grave. Behind him stood 3 Apache men Sarah had never seen before. They wore a mixture of traditional and European clothing, deerskin leggings and cotton shirts, their long black hair bound with red cloth. 2 were older warriors with weathered faces and eyes that had seen much. But it was the third who commanded attention. He stood well over 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders and a bearing that spoke of natural authority. He appeared to be in his late 20s, with a face that was striking rather than handsome. Strong cheekbones, a proud nose, and eyes dark as obsidian that seemed to take in everything with a single glance. A jagged scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, but rather than marring his appearance, it only emphasized his air of danger and power. Silas Murphy, Colonel Warren said formally, these men are representatives of the Chiricahua Apache. This is Victorio, this is Nana, and this, he gestured to the tall young man, is Takoda, son of Chief Cochillo. The Apache named Takoda met Sarah's gaze across the room, and something electric passed between them. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly, and Sarah felt as if he could see straight through to her soul. "What's this about, Colonel?" Silas asked nervously. "Peace negotiations," Warren replied curtly. "The Apache claim those men we buried last week murdered a family from their band. They've provided evidence, personal items, tracks. After investigation, I'm inclined to believe them." The crowd that had gathered in the trading post murmured angrily. One rancher spat on the floor. "And we're supposed to just forget our dead? Your dead were murderers." Victorio spoke for the first time, his English accented but clear. "They killed Long Shadow, his wife Morning Dove, and their 2 children. Burned their bodies. For horses." A horrible silence fell. "The Apache have proposed a peace offering," Colonel Warren continued. "To prevent further bloodshed, they're willing to provide restitution to the town. Horses, blankets, and other trade goods." "That ain't good enough," someone shouted. "There's more," Warren said. He looked uncomfortable now, shifting his weight. "They've proposed a marriage alliance as a gesture of permanent peace between the Apache and Redemption Creek." Sarah's heart began to pound for reasons she couldn't explain. "A marriage?" Beatrice spoke up, her voice calculating. "Between whom?" Takoda spoke now, his deep voice carrying easily through the room. "I will take a wife from this town. We will live between both worlds, 3 moons with my people, 3 moons here. Our children will be bridge between Apache and white. This is great honor." "And who exactly did you have in mind?" Uncle Silas asked, though Sarah could already see the wheels turning in his head. Takoda's eyes found Sarah again, and this time held her gaze. The girl with hair like dry grass and eyes like sky water. Her heart is different. I see this. Every head in the trading post turned to stare at Sarah. She stood frozen, dish rags still in her hands, water dripping onto the floor. "Absolutely not!" Beatrice started to object, but Silas held up his hand. "What would be the terms?" he asked. "Brother, you can't be serious," Beatrice began. "Quiet, B. What are the terms?" Silas repeated. Victorio spoke. 50 horses, 20 blankets, 10 rifles, peace treaty signed by Chief and Colonel. No more raids on this town. No more attacks on our camps. Colonel Warren added, "The army would support this arrangement. It would bring stability to the region. Sarah finally found her voice. Don't I get a say in this? Everyone looked at her as if a piece of furniture had spoken. Of course not, Beatrice snapped. You'll do as you're told, girl. Actually, Colonel Warren interjected, given the delicate nature of these negotiations, Miss Murphy's consent would be advisable. All eyes turned back to Sarah. She looked at Dakota, who stood with quiet dignity despite being surrounded by people who viewed him as less than human. She looked at Beatrice, whose face showed barely concealed glee at the prospect of being rid of her stepdaughter. She thought of Thomas Wardell waiting in the wings, and she thought of the Apache family that had been murdered. A mother and father and their 2 children, burned beyond recognition. For horses. If I agree, Sarah said slowly, what would happen to me? Dakota stepped forward, and the crowd tensed, but he moved slowly, showing he meant no threat. He addressed Sarah directly, as if they were the only 2 people in the room. You would be my wife. I would protect you with my life. You would learn our ways. We would learn yours. You would never go hungry. You would be honored among my people as I am honored among yours. Your words would carry weight in councils. And, his eyes grew intense, you would be free, more free than you are now. That last sentence struck Sarah like a thunderbolt. This stranger, this savage, who had known her for all of 5 minutes, had seen what no one else in this room acknowledged, that she was a prisoner in her own life. How long do I have to decide? She asked. Sarah Catherine Murphy, Beatrice hissed. You cannot seriously be considering— 3 days, Colonel Warren interrupted. The Apache will wait 3 days for your answer. Dakota gave a small nod, his eyes never leaving Sarah's face. 3 days, he agreed. Then he and his companions turned and left the trading post as silently as they had entered. The moment they were gone, chaos erupted. Everyone shouted at once, arguing about the proposal, about the Apache, about Sarah's fitness to make such a decision. Through it all, Sarah stood silent, her mind racing. That night, lying on her pallet, she tried to make sense of what had happened. An Apache warrior, a son of a chief, had chosen her. Not beautiful Cordelia with her dark curls, not delicate Margaret with her rosebud mouth. Her. Plain Sarah with her freckles and calloused hands and stubborn tongue. Why? And more importantly, what should she do? The next 3 days passed in a storm of arguments, pressure, and threats. Beatrice oscillated between fury and opportunism. You'll ruin your sister's chances if you associate our family with savages. She'd shriek one moment, then calculate the next. Although 50 horses would solve many of our problems, Uncle Silas saw only profit. The girl's no use to us anyway, and this way she brings value to the family. It's a good deal. Cordelia and Margaret, for their part, seemed torn between jealousy that Sarah had been chosen over them and relief that their unwanted stepsister would be gone. The townspeople were divided. Some saw the marriage alliance as a smart move that would bring peace and prosperity. Others viewed it as a betrayal of white civilization, a surrender to savagery. Several men muttered that they'd rather see every Apache dead than have one of their women married to a redskin. Thomas Wardell cornered Sarah behind the trading post on the second day. His breath stank of whiskey and rotted teeth. You'd choose an Apache over a white man, he snarled, grabbing her arm hard enough to bruise. Over me? I haven't made my choice yet, Sarah said, trying to pull away. And if I did, it wouldn't be yours to question. His grip tightened painfully. You uppity little— The lady said, let go. Wardell spun around. Dakota stood there, having appeared as silently as smoke. He wasn't armed, or at least no weapons were visible, but something in his stance made Wardell release Sarah and step back. This is a private conversation, Wardell blustered. A man who must use force is not having a conversation, Dakota replied calmly. His eyes flicked to Sarah's arm, already bruising. He is being coward. Wardell's face turned purple with rage, but several cavalry soldiers had appeared at the end of the alley, drawn by the commotion. With a final venomous glare at both Sarah and Dakota, he stalked away. "Thank you," Sarah said softly. Dakota inclined his head. "You are afraid of him." It wasn't a question, but Sarah answered anyway. "My stepmother wants me to marry him. If I don't accept your offer." Something flickered in Dakota's eyes. Anger, perhaps, or disgust. "Among my people, marriage is woman's choice too. Man offers gifts, proves his worth. Woman decides if he is worthy of her." "That's not how it works here," Sarah said bitterly. "Here, women are property." "I know. This is why I choose you." Sarah blinked. "What do you mean?" Dakota leaned against the trading post wall, his posture deceptively relaxed despite being in potential enemy territory. "In council, Colonel shows us photographs of town families. For choosing wife, 23 women in pictures." He smiled slightly. "Many are beautiful, yes, but I look at eyes, not faces. Most eyes are empty. Some are cruel, some are frightened, but your eyes—" He met her gaze. "Your eyes are angry and intelligent and trapped, like hawk in cage." Sarah's throat tightened. No one had ever truly seen her before. Not her father, who'd been too grief-stricken over her mother's death to notice his daughter's pain. Certainly not Beatrice and her daughters. But this stranger, this Apache warrior, had looked at a single photograph and understood her entire life. "Why do you want a wife from the town?" she asked. "If the Apache view women with such respect, why not marry one of your own?" "This is a good question." Dakota's expression grew serious. "You know why white men push into our lands? Why they break treaties? Because they do not see us as people. To them, we are animals to be moved or killed. A marriage alliance forces them to see truth. We are human. We have families. We love our children. When Apache blood and white blood mix in one child, maybe, there is hope for peace." "That's a heavy burden to put on a child," Sarah observed. "Yes. This is why a mother must be strong and smart and brave enough to live in two worlds." He paused. "I see these things in you, but if you do not see them in yourself, then we both make mistake." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, absorbing his words. Finally, she asked the question that had been haunting her since the trading post meeting. "You have a scar," she said, gesturing to the jagged line on his face. "How did you get it?" Most men would have bristled at such a personal question. Dakota simply touched the scar with one finger, as if remembering. 2 summers ago, cavalry raid our camp at dawn. I am sleeping when I hear screaming. I run out, see soldiers killing everyone, old men, women, children. No warriors there, just families. I fight with knife only, no time for bow. Soldiers slash me with saber." He traced the scar's path. "I kill him, kill 3 more, but we lose 15 people that day, including my mother and my young sister." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry." "Why are you sorry? You did not kill them." "I know, but my people did, and it's wrong. It's all so wrong." Dakota studied her face intently. "This is why I choose you," he said quietly. "You see, most whites, they hear a story like mine. They say we must have deserved it. Or they say nothing, because dead Apache is just dead Indian. But you see, you understand. You have conscience." "Conscience won't make me a good Apache wife," Sarah said. "I don't know your language, your customs, how to survive in the desert." "These things can be taught," Dakota interrupted. "Conscience cannot. Courage cannot. Compassion cannot. You have these already." He pushed away from the wall, preparing to leave. "Tomorrow is last day. When sun sets, I come for answer." But Sarah, he used her name for the first time, and something about the way he pronounced it, with a slightly different emphasis, made it sound beautiful. "Do not choose me because you fear other choice. Do not choose me because you pity Apache, or because you want to escape. Choose me only if you want to build something new, or do not choose me at all." He walked away, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts. On the morning of the third day, Sarah made her decision. She found Beatrice in the trading post, haggling with the prospector over the price of flour. "I'll do it," Sarah said quietly. "I'll marry Dakota." Beatrice's eyes gleamed with triumph, though she tried to hide it behind a mask of maternal concern. "Are you certain, Sarah? Once this is done, there's no going back. You'll be living with savages." "I'm certain." "Well then." Beatrice smoothed her skirt. "I suppose we should tell your uncle and the colonel." She paused. "You'll need a dress, something suitable. Can't have you looking like a beggar at your own wedding." It was the first time Beatrice had ever shown any concern for Sarah's appearance, and they both knew it had nothing to do with Sarah and everything to do with how the family would be perceived. The next few days passed in a blur of preparations. The entire town buzzed with news of the upcoming wedding. Colonel Warren insisted on a formal ceremony to legitimize the marriage alliance in the eyes of both communities. It would take place in 1 week, giving both sides time to prepare. The Apache sent messengers with gifts: beautiful deerskin leather, beaded moccasins, and a wedding dress of white doe skin, decorated with intricate beadwork in turquoise and silver. When Sarah first saw the dress, she gasped. It was more beautiful than anything she'd ever owned, more beautiful than anything she'd ever imagined owning. "They must have had women working on this for weeks," Mrs. Henderson, the postmaster's wife, said in wonder. "The beadwork alone. Lord, I've never seen such detail." Sarah traced the patterns with her fingertips, symbols she didn't yet understand but which seemed to tell a story. Later, she would learn they represented the joining of two peoples, the harmony of sun and moon, earth and sky. But in that moment, she knew only that someone had poured enormous care and artistry into creating this dress for her. Cordelia, seeing the dress, turned green with envy. Why should she get something so fine? It's wasted on her. Margaret was more practical. At least she'll be out of the house. More room for us. Beatrice said nothing, but Sarah caught her calculating expression and knew her stepmother was already planning how to profit from the alliance. On the morning of the wedding, Sarah rose before dawn. She couldn't sleep anyway, her mind spinning with fear and excitement and uncertainty. She dressed carefully in the doeskin wedding dress, amazed at how perfectly it fit. Someone had taken great care to get her measurements exactly right. Mrs. Henderson came to help with her hair, braiding it with leather cord and tiny white shell beads. "You're doing a brave thing," she said softly. "Braver than most of these folks realize. You'll be a bridge between two worlds, and that's a lonely place to stand." "You don't think I'm making a mistake?" Sarah asked, surprised. Mrs. Henderson had always been kind to her, but most of the townswomen had been cool and disapproving when they learned of her decision. "Mistake?" Mrs. Henderson smiled. "Child, I've watched you these past months, working yourself to the bone for a family that doesn't appreciate you, with Thomas Wardell circling like a vulture. Whether this marriage works out or not, you're escaping a life that would have killed your spirit. That's no mistake." Tears pricked Sarah's eyes. "Thank you." The ceremony was held at noon in the open space between the trading post and the fort, neutral ground. On one side stood the townspeople of Redemption Creek, dressed in their Sunday best and eyeing the proceedings with a mixture of curiosity and hostility. On the other side stood the Apache, warriors, women, children, and elders who had made the journey to witness the wedding. Sarah's heart hammered as she walked through the parted crowd. She had no father to give her away, no family that truly cared whether she came or went. She walked alone, as she had been alone for so long. Then she saw Dakota. He stood in the center of the space, dressed in traditional Apache clothing, deerskin leggings and shirt decorated with beadwork and quillwork, his long hair flowing free, adorned with feathers and silver. He looked magnificent and terrifying and completely, utterly real. Next to him stood an elderly Apache man with a face like weathered stone and eyes that held infinite depth. This was Chief Cochulo, Dakota's father. On Dakota's other side stood Colonel Warren, who would officiate the ceremony to satisfy white law. Sarah took her place beside Dakota. He looked down at her, and something softened in his expression. "You are beautiful," he said quietly in English, for her benefit. "So are you," she replied, and was rewarded with a flash of surprised pleasure in his eyes. The ceremony was a blend of traditions. Colonel Warren spoke first, reciting the legal requirements for marriage in the United States. His words were dry and formal, and Sarah barely heard them. Her attention was caught by the Apache elders who stood in a circle around them, chanting softly in their own language. Then Chief Cochilo stepped forward. He spoke in Apache, his voice resonant and powerful. Dakota translated quietly for Sarah. "My father says, today we join not just two people, but two peoples. This woman and this man carry hopes of many. They will walk difficult path. There will be those who say marriage is betrayal, from both sides. But marriage is not betrayal. Marriage is bridge. And bridges, though they stand between two lands, belong to both and neither. They are their own place." The chief continued, and Dakota's voice grew husky with emotion as he translated. "My father says, I give my son to this woman. I give her my protection and name in my family. From this day, she is daughter of Cochilo. Any who harm her, harm me. Any who dishonor her, dishonor my people." Chief Cochilo placed his hands on Sarah's head in blessing, then tied a woven bracelet around her wrist, intricate white and turquoise beads that marked her as family. Then it was time for the exchange of gifts. In Apache tradition, the groom gave gifts to the bride to demonstrate his ability to provide for her. Dakota had prepared his gifts carefully, and they were laid out on a blanket between them. Beautifully tanned deerskin, a bow with a quiver of arrows, a knife with a handle carved from antler, dried meat and pemmican, baskets woven so tightly they could hold water. Practical gifts, survival gifts, gifts that said, "I will teach you to thrive, not just survive." But then Dakota reached behind him and pulled out one final gift. The entire crowd, Apache and white alike, drew in a collective breath. It was a book. Not just any book, but a leather-bound journal with cream-colored pages. The cover was decorated with tooled leather designs, and a pencil was attached with a leather cord. Sarah stared at it, her mind refusing to process what she was seeing. Books were precious on the frontier, expensive and hard to come by. A journal like this would have cost more than most families made in a month. "I hear you like writing," Dakota said softly. "Storekeeper tell me your father teach you letters and numbers. Tell me you always writing on scraps of paper, hiding words like treasures." He held the journal out to her. "No more hiding. You write your words. Write our story. Write truth of what happens when two worlds try to become one. Maybe someday, your words help others understand." Sarah took the journal with shaking hands. She looked up at Dakota, and for the first time, she felt tears spill down her cheeks, but they were not tears of sorrow. "How did you—" she began. "I ask questions. I listen. I see you." His eyes were intense, burning with something that made Sarah's heart race. "I see you when no one else does. This will not change. I promise." The assembled townspeople were utterly silent. Even Beatrice looked stunned. In that moment, everyone present understood something profound. This was not a political alliance or a peace treaty disguised as a marriage. This was a man who had taken the time to truly see a woman, to understand what would speak to her soul, and to honor it. The silence stretched until finally, unexpectedly, Mrs. Henderson began to clap. Slowly, other townspeople joined in. Not everyone, but enough. The Apache remained silent, but Sarah noticed many of the women nodding in approval. Colonel Warren cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the display of emotion. "I now pronounce you man and wife," he said gruffly, "according to the laws of the United States and the customs of the Apache people." "Now," Chief Cochilo said through Dakota, "feast. Celebrate. Today is Day of Hope." The wedding feast was laid out on long tables, Apache and American food side by side. venison and roasted corn, beans and squash, cornbread and fry bread, berries and honey. The two communities mingled awkwardly at first, but food and music have a way of breaking down barriers. Sarah sat beside Dakota, overwhelmed by the sudden change in her circumstances. Just yesterday, she had been unwanted Sarah, the burden, the extra mouth to feed. Today, she was a wife, a bridge between peoples and, according to Chief Cochilo, a daughter of an Apache chief. "You are quiet," Dakota observed. "Are you frightened?" "Yes," Sarah admitted, "but not of you, of everything else, of failing, of not being what you need me to be." "I need you to be yourself," Dakota said simply. "Nothing more, nothing less." As the feast continued, people began to approach them, some to offer congratulations, others to stare curiously at the unusual couple. Sarah noticed that while many of the townsmen still looked hostile, the women seemed more accepting. Perhaps they understood, as Mrs. Henderson did, that Sarah had escaped a grim fate. Then Thomas Wardle approached, his steps unsteady with drink. Well, he slurred, his eyes roving over Sarah in a way that made her skin crawl. "The little nobody married herself a savage. Tell me, Chief," he addressed Dakota with deliberate disrespect, "when you get tired of her, will you send her back? 'Cause I'm still interested in—" He never finished the sentence. Dakota moved with startling speed, rising from his seat and stepping between Wardle and Sarah in one fluid motion. He didn't touch Wardle, didn't raise his voice, but something in his stance made the drunk man stumble backward. "You speak of my wife with disrespect," Dakota said quietly. "In my culture, this means we fight. Here, I am guest, so I only warn once. Speak her name again, look at her again, come near her again, and guest or not, we will have problem. You understand?" Wardle's face went through several shades of red and purple. He looked like he wanted to argue, to fight, but something in Dakota's eyes made him think better of it. With a muttered curse, he staggered away. Colonel Warren, who had witnessed the exchange, approached. "Mr. Dakota, I appreciate your restraint. That man is trouble." "Yes," Dakota agreed. "He is man who hurts women. I smell it on him like blood smell. He is reason you choose marriage, yes?" This last was directed at Sarah. "One of the reasons," Sarah admitted. "Then I am glad," Dakota said. "But I'm sorry that fear makes choice, not freedom." The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple when Chief Cochilo stood to make an announcement. He spoke in Apache, and Dakota translated for the assembled crowd. "My father says, in Apache tradition, there is more to wedding gift. The husband must demonstrate not just ability to provide, but worthiness of bride. He must show he understands her value beyond beauty, beyond work she can do. He must see her spirit." Chief Cochilo gestured, and several Apache men brought forward a large object covered with a blanket. When they removed it, Sarah gasped. It was a small wooden desk, beautifully crafted with smooth pine wood, with a slanted top perfect for writing, and small compartments for storing papers and pencils. Carved into the sides were intricate designs, Apache symbols interwoven with English letters that spelled out Sarah's name. But that wasn't what made the entire crowd fall silent. Standing beside the desk was a young Apache woman, perhaps Sarah's age, holding a large bundle of papers. At a nod from Chief Cochilo, she began to speak in halting but clear English. "I am Naelnish, daughter of Victorio. I speak for women of our band. When Dakota say he choose white woman for wife, we afraid. We think white woman will be weak, will not understand our ways, will look down on us. But Dakota, he is wise. He say, I will show you her heart before you judge her face." Naelnish held up the papers. "These are stories. Stories Dakota collect about the woman he choose. He goes to town many times before wedding. He talk to people. He listen. He learn." She began to read, and Sarah's world tilted on its axis. "Storekeeper in Missouri town say, Sarah Murphy? She's the girl who taught the colored children to read in secret Even though it was against the law, her stepmother beat her for it, but she kept teaching them anyway. Had a whole school in the old barn until someone informed on her. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth. She had forgotten about that, or tried to forget, because the consequences had been so severe, but apparently Dakota had traveled all the way back to Missouri to learn about her. Nalnish continued, "Woman named Mrs. Perry say, that's Sarah. She nursed my baby through scarlet fever when I was too sick to stand. Didn't care that the doctor said it was catching. Stayed 3 days and nights until we were both well. Never asked for payment, never wanted thanks." More stories followed, each one a piece of Sarah's life she thought no one had noticed or cared about. The time she'd given her own food to a starving family. The way she'd defended a traveling Chinese merchant from a group of drunk cowboys. How she'd saved money from scraps and odd jobs to buy books, only to give them to the mission school when she learned they had none. Small acts of kindness and courage that Sarah had thought meant nothing to anyone, but Dakota had found them, had tracked them down, had documented them as if they were precious treasures. "Dakota, show us these stories," Nalnish said, her voice growing warm. He say, "This is woman I choose, not for her face, but for her heart. She sees people, truly sees them, even when they are invisible to others. This is woman worthy to be mother of children who will walk between two worlds. This is woman worthy to be daughter of chief. This is woman who will teach our children compassion and teach white children that Apache are human." Nalnish stepped forward and took Sarah's hands. "We women of the band, we say, we accept you. We will teach you our ways. We will protect you as sister. We will help you be strong when path is hard. Welcome, daughter. Welcome, sister." The Apache women began to ululate, a high, trilling cry of celebration that sent chills down Sarah's spine. They surrounded her, touching her hair, her dress, offering words in their own language that she couldn't understand but felt in her bones. Sarah turned to Dakota, tears streaming down her face. "You did all this? You went back to Missouri? You talked to all those people?" "Yes." His expression was solemn. "In my culture, choosing wife is sacred responsibility. I must know who you are, not who someone tell me you are. So I look, I listen, I find truth, and truth is, you are exactly who I hope you are. Woman with brave heart and strong spirit. Woman who sees people, not skin color. Woman who does right thing even when it costs her. But those things, I didn't do them for recognition. They needed to be done. Yes, this is exactly why you are right choice." Dakota took her hands. "Sarah, I do not love you yet. We just meet. But I respect you. I honor you. I see you. And I promise to spend every day earning your respect in return. Love, if it comes, must be built on this foundation, on seeing each other truly." Sarah couldn't speak. Her entire body shook with the weight of being truly seen, perhaps for the first time in her life, not for her face or her youth or her usefulness, but for the content of her character. She looked around at the crowd, at Beatrice, whose face showed shock and something that might have been shame, at Cordelia and Margaret, who looked stunned, at the townspeople, many of whom were wiping their own eyes, at Colonel Warren, whose stern expression had softened, at the Apache people who watched her with acceptance in their eyes. And she understood something profound. The gift that had silenced the whole town wasn't the desk or even the stories. It was the act of seeing, truly seeing, another person's humanity and worth. In a world divided by color and culture, fear and prejudice, Dakota had done something revolutionary. He had looked past everything society said should matter and found the truth of who she was. "Thank you," she finally whispered. "I promise I will try to be worthy of this honor." "You already are," Dakota replied. "Now come. We have work to do. Building bridge between worlds. It will not be easy, but I think we can do it together." As the celebration continued into the night, Sarah sat at her new desk with her journal open before her. In the flickering firelight, With the sounds of two cultures mingling in the background, she wrote her first entry. Today I married a man I barely know, but he knows me, truly knows me, in ways no one ever has. He saw past my plain face and rough hands to the person beneath. He crossed cultures and miles to learn my story, and in doing so, he taught me that being seen is perhaps the greatest gift one person can give another. I don't know what tomorrow brings. I don't know if this marriage will work, if I can truly live in two worlds, if the children we might have will find acceptance in either. But I know this. For the first time in my life, I am not invisible. I am not a burden. I am seen, valued, and welcomed. And that changes everything. The journey to the Apache camp took 3 days on horseback. Sarah, who had ridden only occasionally and never for such distances, was exhausted and sore by the end of each day. But Dakota was patient, showing her how to sit properly, how to move with the horse rather than against it, how to read the land for water and shelter. The group traveling with them included Dakota's father, Chief Coachlo, several warriors including Victorio and Nana, and a handful of women including Nalnish, who had appointed herself as Sarah's teacher and protector. You will need friend, Nalnish had said simply. Becoming Apache is not easy. Better to have sister to help. As they rode through the vast desert landscape, Sarah was struck by its harsh beauty. Towering saguaro cacti standing like sentinels, red rock formations carved by wind and time, mountains purple in the distance, and sky so vast it seemed to swallow the earth. This was a world completely different from the green Missouri hills of her childhood, or even the dusty streets of Redemption Creek. Are you frightened? Dakota asked on the second evening as they made camp. Sarah considered the question honestly. A little, but more overwhelmed. This land is so big, I feel very small. Good, Dakota said, surprising her. When you feel small, you are humble. Humble people learn. Proud people die. He gestured to the desert around them. This land does not care if you are white or Apache, rich or poor. It cares only if you are wise enough to respect it and learn its lessons. That night, as Sarah lay in her bedroll under more stars than she'd ever seen, Dakota spoke to her quietly from his own bedroll a respectful distance away. Sarah, I want you to know, I will not claim husband's rights until you are ready. Apache marriages are built on choice, not force. When you want me, you will tell me. Until then, I'm your teacher, your protector, your friend. Nothing more unless you wish it. Sarah's heart swelled with gratitude and something else, a growing respect for this man who seemed to understand that true strength came from restraint, not domination. Thank you, she whispered into the darkness. Sleep now, Dakota replied. Tomorrow we reach home. The Apache camp, when they finally arrived, was nothing like Sarah had imagined. She'd expected something primitive and temporary, but instead found a well-organized community of wickiups, dome-shaped dwellings made of wooden frames covered with brush and hides. There were designated areas for cooking, for working leather, for crafting weapons and tools. Children played a game with a ball and stick. Women tended gardens of squash, corn and beans. Men repaired weapons and tended horses. It looked, Sarah realized with surprise, like a town. Different from Redemption Creek, yes, but no less civilized or organized. The people gathered to see the new arrival. Sarah felt dozens of eyes on her, measuring, judging. Some faces were curious, others suspicious, a few openly hostile. She stood straight, meeting their gazes, refusing to show fear even as her heart hammered. An elderly woman stepped forward. She was small and wizened, her face a map of wrinkles, but her eyes were sharp as obsidian. She walked around Sarah, examining her from every angle, then reached out and squeezed her arms, her shoulders. Soft, the woman said in Apache. Too soft. No muscles. Will die before winter. This is Lozen, Dakota said. She is medicine woman and warrior. She has killed more enemies than most men. She does not like whites. Thank you for the honesty, Sarah said dryly. To her surprise, Lozen's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. She has spirit. Good. Spirit can be taught to be strong. Body follows spirit. Over the following weeks, Sarah learned just how right Lozen was and how soft her previous life had made her. Nalnish and the other women became her teachers. They taught her to build and maintain a wickiup, to tan leather until her hands cracked and bled, to weave baskets so tightly they could hold water, to prepare food from plants Sarah had never heard of, to track animals and read signs in the earth that were invisible to her untrained eyes. They taught her the language, laughing good-naturedly when she mangled pronunciations. They taught her to carry water in pottery jars, balanced on her head, to start fire without matches, to tell time by the sun and navigate by the stars. Lozen, despite her initial skepticism, became one of Sarah's fiercest teachers. You walk like white woman, she'd bark. Loud, clumsy. You will die. Walk like this. And she'd demonstrate the silent, rolling gait that let Apache warriors move through the desert without sound. Sarah practiced until her feet bled. She learned until her head ached. She worked until her hands were as calloused and rough as any Apache woman's. And slowly, grudgingly, she earned respect. Dakota watched her progress with quiet approval, helping when asked but never interfering with the women's teaching. At night, he would answer her questions about Apache culture, beliefs, and history. Why do you treat women as equals? Sarah asked one evening. Most cultures don't. Because we are not fools, Dakota replied. Women bear children, yes. They are source of life. They can also be warriors, like Lozen, who fights beside men and is respected as much as any warrior. They choose who they marry. They can divorce husband if he treats them badly. They own their own property. Why would we waste half our people by treating them as less? It was so logical that Sarah wondered why white society couldn't see it the same way. As the weeks passed, Sarah began to understand the Apache worldview, their deep connection to the land, their emphasis on community over individual, their pragmatic approach to survival, their rich spiritual life that saw the sacred in everything from mountains to insects. She also began to understand why they fought so fiercely against the encroaching whites. This wasn't just land to them, it was home, heritage, identity, and religion all woven together. When settlers and miners and soldiers pushed into their territory, they weren't just taking space, they were destroying an entire way of life. 1 month into her stay, Sarah witnessed a council meeting. A group of young warriors wanted to raid a nearby settlement that had been built on sacred Apache land. The debate was fierce. They desecrate our holy places, one warrior argued. They kill our game, pollute our water sources. We must drive them out. And then more soldiers come, Victorio countered. And more, until we are all dead. We must be smart, not just brave. The debate raged until Chief Cochilo asked Sarah to speak. She was surprised. She had assumed she would be silent during such an important discussion. I am new to your ways, Sarah said carefully in halting Apache. But I know white ways. If you raid settlement, newspapers will print stories of savage Apache attacking innocent families. More soldiers will come. Politicians will demand extermination of all Apache. But, she paused, gathering her thoughts, if you send delegation to government with me as translator and witness, if you explain why land is sacred, if you offer to show them other places to settle where there are no sacred sites, maybe some will listen. No one will listen, a young warrior spat. Whites do not see us as human. Some don't, Sarah agreed, but some do. Colonel Warren is fair man. There are others. If we do not try a peaceful way first, we lose moral ground. We become what they say we are, savages who kill without reason. The council debated her suggestion late into the night. Finally, Chief Cochilo made his decision. They would try peace first. If it failed, then warriors could choose their own path. That night, Dakota came to Sarah's wiki up. They had been sleeping separately, as he had promised, but now he stood at the entrance with an uncertain expression she'd never seen on his face before. "You spoke well in council," he said. "Father was impressed. So was I." "Thank you. I hope it makes a difference." "Sarah, He paused, uncharacteristically struggling for words. "These weeks watching you learn, watching you try so hard even when exhausted, watching you earn respect of people who did not want to respect you, I find myself feeling things I did not expect to feel so soon." Sarah's heart began to pound. "What things?" "I am falling in love with you," Dakota said simply, "not because of duty or alliance, but because of who you are. Your courage, your kindness, your stubborn refusal to give up even when Lozen makes you carry water jars until you cry, the way you laugh when children play jokes on you, the way you write in journal every night trying to understand and record our ways. I see you, and I want you, as wife truly, not just in name." Sarah stood and walked to him. She placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heart beat as fast as her own. "I feel it too," she whispered. "This thing growing between us. It frightens me a little." "Why frightened?" "Because it's real. Because I'm starting to understand what you meant about building love on respect. Because I look at you and think, this man truly sees me. This man chose me not for what I could give him, but for who I am. And that's something I never thought I'd have." Dakota cupped her face in his hands. "May I kiss you?" "Yes," Sarah breathed. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, two people learning each other. Then it deepened, became urgent, became a promise of what could be between them. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Dakota rested his forehead against hers. "Will you have me as true husband?" he asked. "Not because of alliance or treaty, but because you want me." "Yes," Sarah said. "Yes, I will." That night, they consummated their marriage, not as strangers fulfilling obligations, but as two people who had chosen each other freely, who saw each other clearly, and who were building something precious and rare, a love that crossed all boundaries. 3 months into their marriage, when Sarah was just beginning to feel she'd found her place among the Apache, everything fell apart. It started with a messenger from Redemption Creek, a cavalry private who rode into the Apache camp under a white flag. He brought a letter from Colonel Warren, addressed to both Dakota and Sarah. Dakota read it aloud, his voice growing harder with each word. "The peace delegation we proposed has been rejected by territorial authorities. Furthermore, settlers discovered silver on the sacred ground we discussed. Mining claims have been filed. The government intends to relocate the Apache to a reservation in New Mexico territory within 3 months. Any resistance will be met with military force. I am sorry. I tried to advocate for your position, but I was overruled. I suggest you prepare your people for the inevitable." The camp erupted in fury. Warriors shouted for war. Women wept for their homes. Elders sat in stunned silence, knowing what this meant: the end of their way of life. Chief Cochillo called for calm, but even his authority was tested. "We knew this might come," he said heavily, "but I hoped the marriage alliance would matter more." "It meant nothing," a warrior named Geronimo shouted. "They used our peace to buy time to steal our land, and we fell for it because of this white woman and her promises." All eyes turned to Sarah, and she felt the weight of their anger, their disappointment, their betrayal. "I didn't know," she said, her voice shaking. "I believed Colonel Warren. I believed they would listen." "You believe because you are white," Geronimo spat. "You want to believe your people are good, but they are not. They are liars and thieves. And now, because we listen to you, we are too late to fight back effectively." "Enough," Dakota said, his voice cutting through the chaos. Sarah did not make these decisions. She argued for peace in good faith. The betrayal is not hers. But Sarah could see doubt in the eyes around her. Even Nalnish looked uncertain. Only Lozen met her gaze steadily, her ancient eyes knowing. That night, Sarah sat alone in her wiki-up, staring at her journal but unable to write. Everything she'd built, every relationship she'd forged, was crumbling around her. She heard footsteps and looked up to see Victorio standing at the entrance. "May I enter?" he asked formally. "Of course." Victorio sat across from her, his weathered face grave. "There is something you must know, information that will hurt, but you deserve truth." Sarah's stomach clenched. "Tell me." "Your uncle, Silas Murphy, he knew about silver on sacred land. He filed claim 3 weeks ago, before delegation was even proposed. He is one of miners." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. No, he couldn't have. He agreed to the peace. He agreed to nothing. He saw opportunity. He used your marriage to keep Apache peaceful while he and his partners secured mining rights. Victorio's eyes were hard. Your stepmother, she knew too. She suggested you for marriage alliance not to build peace, but to buy time for mining operation. Sarah felt bile rise in her throat. "How do you know this?" "We have scouts in town. We are not blind to white man's ways." Victorio leaned forward. "Question is, did you know?" "No," Sarah gasped. "I swear to you I knew nothing. I would never—" "I believe you," Victorio said, surprising her. "I watch you these months. You are honest. You work hard. You learn our ways with true respect. You are not spy or deceiver, but others will not be so sure. They will say, 'She is white.' Blood calls to blood. Maybe she knew all along." "What should I do?" Sarah whispered. "That is for you to decide, but decide quickly. There will be war now. When war comes, there are no bridges between worlds, only sides. You must choose which side is truly yours." After Victorio left, Sarah sat in the darkness for hours, her mind spinning. She thought of Beatrice's sudden enthusiasm for the marriage, which had seemed out of character. She thought of Uncle Silas's calculating expressions. She thought of how they had pushed her toward this alliance while secretly planning to betray it. They had used her desire to escape Thomas Wardle, used her compassion for the Apache, used her naivety about frontier politics. They had turned her into an unwitting accomplice in their scheme. The betrayal cut deep, not because she loved Beatrice or Silas, but because even when she thought she was finally building something meaningful, she'd actually been a pawn in someone else's game. She picked up her journal and began to write, her hand shaking with fury. "I have been a fool. I thought I was building a bridge between cultures, but I was really just buying time for thieves to steal sacred land. My own family used me as a distraction while they filed mining claims. And now the people who have accepted me, taught me, come to respect me, they will suffer because of my stupidity. Victorio is right. I must choose a side. But how can I choose against my own people? How can I not choose against them when they have done something so unforgivably wrong?" She paused, then wrote one more line. "Maybe the answer is that they stopped being my people long ago. Maybe my people are the ones who see me, who value me, who treat me with respect and honesty. Maybe family is not blood, but choice." The next morning, Sarah sought out Chief Cochilo. She found him sitting alone on a high ridge overlooking the camp, staring out at the mountains that would soon be lost to his people. "I need to go back to Redemption Creek," she told him. He looked at her for a long moment. "To join your people against us?" "No, to stop the mining operation if I can, to expose what was done, to try to make this right. You cannot make it right. What is done is done. Maybe, but I have to try. And if I fail—" Sarah took a deep breath. "If I fail, I want you to know that I choose you. I choose the Apache. I choose Dakota. Whatever happens, I am not your enemy." Chief Cochilo studied her face, then nodded slowly. "I believe you, but believing is not enough for my people right now. They need proof." "Then I'll get proof. I'll document everything in Redemption Creek, the timeline of the mining claims, the government decisions, who knew what and when. I'll write it all down and bring it back. Maybe we can use it to show that the Apache tried for peace and were betrayed. And if your own family tries to stop you," Sarah's jaw set, "then they'll learn I'm not the helpless girl they thought I was anymore." Dakota insisted on going with her. Despite Sarah's protests that he would be in danger in Redemption Creek, he refused to let her go alone. "Where you go, I go," he said firmly. "You are my wife. We face trouble together." They rode out at dawn with 2 other warriors as escort, Victorio and young Geronimo, who wanted to see for himself what the White Town planned. The 3-day journey back to Redemption Creek gave Sarah time to plan. She would go to the land office and demand to see the mining claim records. She would confront Silas and Beatrice. She would document everything in her journal, creating evidence that could be used in territorial court if needed. It was a long shot. She knew that, but it was better than doing nothing. As they crested the final hill and Redemption Creek came into view, Sarah's breath caught. The town had changed dramatically in just 3 months. New buildings had gone up. Mining offices, a assayer's shop, a larger saloon. The population had at least doubled. And in the distance, she could see the dark scar on the sacred mountain where mining operations had begun. "They move fast when they smell gold," Victoria observed bitterly. "Or silver. Precious metal makes white men crazy." They rode into town slowly, and Sarah felt dozens of eyes on them. People stared at Dakota and the warriors with fear and hostility. Someone shouted, "Savages!" A woman pulled her children inside. Sarah's anger kindled. These were the same people who had attended her wedding, eaten at the feast, witnessed Dakota's gifts. But now, seeing him as potential threat to their profits, they reduced him to a slur. They stopped in front of the trading post. Uncle Silas emerged, his face flushing red when he saw them. "Sarah, what are you doing here? And why did you bring them?" He gestured at the Apache as if they were wild animals. "I came for the truth," Sarah said coldly, dismounting. "When did you file your mining claim, Uncle Silas?" His eyes shifted. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me. I know you filed a claim on the sacred mountain. I know you did it before the peace delegation was even proposed. I know you used my marriage to distract the Apache while you secured your profits. Now you wait just a minute." Silas blustered. "No, you wait." Sarah's voice rang out, and she realized a crowd was gathering. "Good. Let them hear this. You used me. You and Beatrice pushed me into this marriage not to build peace, but to buy time for your mining operation. You made me complicit in betraying people who welcomed me, taught me, accepted me as family. You put blood on my hands." Beatrice appeared in the doorway, her face pale. "Sarah, you don't understand frontier economics. I understand. Betrayal." Sarah cut her off. "I understand greed. I understand that you sacrificed any chance at real peace for silver in the ground." Colonel Warren had arrived, pushing through the crowd. "Miss Murphy, Mrs. Dakota, what's this about?" Sarah turned to him. "Colonel, I want to see all documents related to mining claims on the sacred mountain. Specifically, I want to see when they were filed, by whom, and whether any territorial officials were involved in suppressing the peace delegation's proposal." Warren's face went carefully blank. "That's confidential government information." "Then I'll file a formal complaint with the territorial governor, and I'll send copies to newspapers in Santa Fe and San Francisco. I'll make sure everyone knows that a peace alliance was sabotaged by corrupt officials and greedy miners who cared more about silver than human lives." "You can't do that," Silas spluttered. "You're just a girl, a nobody." "I am a daughter of Chief Cochillo," Sarah said, her voice ringing with newfound authority. "I am a witness to both cultures. I have documentation, dates, and testimony, and I have a voice. Maybe you're right that no one will listen, but maybe, just maybe, there are enough decent people who will be horrified by what was done here." Dakota stepped forward to stand beside her, his presence solid and reassuring. "My wife speaks truth. We came in peace. We offered alliance. We trusted, and we were betrayed. This will not be forgotten. The crowd shifted uneasily. Sarah could see the conflict on many faces. People who knew what had been done was wrong, but who also stood to profit from the mining operation. Then, unexpectedly, Mrs. Henderson pushed forward. "I'll testify to what I know," she said firmly. "I heard Silas bragging at the Mercantile about how he'd managed the Apache situation, how he'd used his niece to keep them pacified while the claims went through. I thought it was just talk, but it wasn't, was it?" "Now, Delia," Silas began. Now, Delia me, Silas Murphy. What you did was wrong. What all of you did was wrong." She looked around at the crowd. "We made promises to those people. Sarah married into their tribe in good faith, and we betrayed her just like we betrayed them." Other voices joined in. Not many, but enough. The blacksmith admitted he'd heard rumors of the plan. The postmaster's son confirmed he'd filed mining documents for Silas weeks before the peace delegation. Slowly, reluctantly, the truth emerged. Colonel Warren's face grew thunderous as he listened. "Mr. Murphy, you will come with me to the fort immediately. We need to discuss your timeline of events." "You can't arrest me for filing a legal mining claim," Silas protested. "No, but I can investigate whether you conspired to undermine official peace negotiations, which is a federal offense." Warren turned to Sarah. "Mrs. Dakota, I apologize. I was not aware of this deception. I truly believe the territorial authorities rejected the delegation on its own lack of merit, not because locals had already moved forward with claims." "Will your apology bring back the sacred land?" Dakota asked quietly. "Will it restore trust that has been broken?" "No," Warren admitted. "But perhaps we can find a different approach. If what Mrs. Dakota has documented proves corruption in the territorial office, the mining claims might be invalidated. It's a long shot, but it's something." Sarah felt a small flicker of hope, quickly tempered by reality. How long would that take? Months? Years? And in the meantime, the Apache are supposed to just accept being driven from their homes? "I don't have a good answer," Warren said heavily, "but I give you my word. I will investigate thoroughly, and I will not allow force to be used against the Apache unless they attack first. They have shown restraint where many would not. That counts for something." It wasn't enough. Sarah knew it wasn't enough, but it was more than she'd expected to get. Over the next several days, Sarah worked tirelessly, documenting everything she could find. She interviewed townspeople, copied records, with Warren's reluctant permission, and wrote detailed accounts in her journal of who knew what and when. Dakota and the warriors stayed close, both to protect her and to witness the proceedings. On their fourth day in town, Thomas Wardle made his move. Sarah was alone in the back room of the land office, copying documents by lamplight, when she heard the door open behind her. She turned to find Wardle blocking her exit, his eyes bloodshot and mean. "Thought you were so clever, didn't you?" he slurred. He'd been drinking. She could smell the whiskey from across the room. "Marrying your savage, causing trouble for your own kin." "Get out of my way, Thomas," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Or what? You'll call your Apache? They ain't allowed in here after dark. Curfew order, signed by the colonel himself." He moved closer, and Sarah's heart raced. "You cost me a fortune, you know that? Silas was going to cut me in on the mining operation, 20%. But now, with all your investigating and accusations, the whole thing's held up in legal questions. Could take years to sort out. That's not my problem." "Oh, but it is." Wardle's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. "You see, I figure you owe me. I was willing to marry you, take you off everyone's hands, and you spat in my face. Chose a redskin over a white man. That kind of disrespect don't go unpunished." Sarah tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. "Let go of me." "I don't think so. I think you and I are going to come to an arrangement. You're going to stop all this investigating nonsense. Tell the colonel it was all a misunderstanding, and maybe I won't hurt you too bad. I'm not doing anything for you." Wardle's other hand came up, and Sarah saw the flash of a knife. I think you will. See, the thing about you Indian lovers is nobody much cares what happens to you. Your own people have disowned you, and if you turn up dead, well, we'll just blame it on Apache raiders, start a nice little war, clean out the whole nest of them. Terror flooded Sarah's body, but with it came something else, a cold, clear fury. This man represented everything wrong with the frontier: greed, cruelty, the dehumanization of anyone different, and he thought she would cower before him because that's what women were supposed to do. But Sarah wasn't that woman anymore. When Wardell brought the knife toward her throat, Sarah moved instinctively, using techniques Lozen had drilled into her during combat training that Sarah hadn't thought she'd ever need. She twisted her wrist free, dropped her weight, and drove her elbow into Wardell's gut exactly as the warrior woman had taught her. Wardell grunted and staggered back, more surprised than hurt. "You little—" Sarah didn't give him time to recover. She grabbed the heavy ledger from the desk and swung it at his head with all her strength. It connected with a satisfying crack, and Wardell went down hard, the knife clattering from his hand. For a moment, Sarah stood there, breathing hard, staring at the man who had terrorized her, who had thought she was weak prey. Then she picked up the knife, evidence, and ran out of the room, shouting for help. The cavalry guards came running along with half the town. They found Wardell groaning on the floor, blood trickling from a gash on his head. When he saw the crowd, he immediately began shouting, "She attacked me! That savage-loving witch tried to kill me." "That's a lie," Sarah said, her voice remarkably steady despite her shaking hands. "He cornered me alone, threatened me with this knife," she held it up, "and told me to stop investigating the mining claims or he'd kill me and blame it on Apache raiders to start a war." "She's lying," Waddell snarled, trying to get to his feet. "Everyone knows she's turned against her own people." "Is that so?" Colonel Warren had arrived, his face grave. "Because we have a witness who says otherwise." He gestured, and Dakota stepped forward from the shadows. Sarah's heart leaped. He must have been following her, staying close despite the curfew. "I hear everything," Dakota said. "He threatened my wife. He say he will kill her and start war. He pull knife first. She defend herself, as is her right." "A savage's testimony doesn't count for anything," Wardell spat. "Perhaps not to you," Warren replied coldly, "but it counts to me. And more importantly, I believe there's something you should know, Wardell. That land office has windows, and several townspeople were outside smoking. They heard the commotion. They heard your threats." "Indeed." Mrs. Henderson stepped forward with two other women. "We heard him," she confirmed. "Every word. He threatened her life and tried to force her into covering up the mining corruption." Wardell's face went from red to white. "You're all crazy. You're going to believe them over me?" "Yes," Warren said simply. "Sergeant, arrest this man for assault, threatening a federal witness, and conspiracy to incite conflict with the Apache. Take him to the stockade." As Wardell was dragged away, still cursing and threatening, Sarah felt her knees go weak. Dakota was there instantly, catching her, holding her steady. "Are you hurt?" he asked urgently, his hands moving over her arms, checking for injuries. "No, I'm fine, just shaken." She looked up at him. "You followed me." "Of course. You are my wife. Where you go in danger, I follow. This is my vow." Sarah buried her face in his chest, letting herself feel the fear she'd held at bay during the confrontation. "He would have killed me. He would have blamed you, started a war. But he did not. You are strong. You fight well. Lozen would be proud." Dakota's arms tightened around her. "I am proud." Over his shoulder, Sarah saw the gathered crowd, some looking shocked, others approving, still others uncomfortable with the display of affection between an Apache man and a white woman. She didn't care what they thought anymore. These people's approval had never mattered. What mattered was truth, justice, and the man who held her like she was precious. The next morning, Colonel Warren called a town meeting. The small church was packed, standing room only, as people crowded in to hear what the colonel would say. Warren stood at the front, his uniform immaculate, his bearing military precise. Beside him stood Sarah and Dakota, Chief Cochilo and Victorio, and, to everyone's surprise, Silas and Beatrice in chains. "Citizens of Redemption Creek," Warren began, his voice carrying to the back of the room. "In the past week, serious allegations have been made regarding the mining claims on what the Apache call the Mountain of Spirits. Mrs. Sarah Dakota has provided substantial evidence that these claims were filed in bad faith, with full knowledge that they would violate treaty agreements and sabotage peace negotiations." He gestured to Sarah, who stepped forward with her journal. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was clear as she read from her documentation. "On June 15, 1872, my uncle Silas Murphy filed mining claims on the Mountain of Spirits, 2 full weeks before the peace delegation was even proposed. On June 17th, he wrote to territorial officials requesting that any Apache peace initiatives be delayed until certain financial interests could be secured. On June 20th, he and my stepmother, Beatrice Murphy, discussed using my arranged marriage to an Apache leader as a distraction that would keep the tribe peaceful while mining operations commenced." The church erupted in murmurs and gasps. Sarah continued reading, laying out a damning timeline of corruption, greed, and betrayal. She had receipts, copied letters, and testimony from multiple witnesses. When she finished, Warren spoke again. "Based on this evidence, I'm declaring the mining claims on the Mountain of Spirits null and void, pending a full territorial investigation. Silas and Beatrice Murphy will be transferred to Santa Fe to face federal charges. And," he paused, letting his words sink in, "I am formally recommending to the territorial governor that the Mountain of Spirits be designated as protected Apache land in perpetuity, with any violations prosecuted as federal crimes." The church exploded. Some people cheered. Others shouted in outrage. Miners and prospectors who had bought into the claims yelled about their lost investments. Ranchers who feared Apache retaliation demanded military protection. Warren held up his hand for silence. "I understand this is not what many of you wanted to hear, but the fact remains. Laws were broken, treaties were violated, and an entire people were nearly driven to war based on lies and greed. If we are to call ourselves civilized, we must honor our agreements, even when it's inconvenient, even when it costs us money." "But what about property rights?" someone shouted. "What about American citizens?" Chief Cochilo stood then, his presence commanding silence. When he spoke, his English was accented but powerful. "For 500 seasons, my people live on this land. We bury our dead in Mountain of Spirits. We go there to pray, to seek visions, to connect with our ancestors. Then white men come and say, 'This land is ours now. Your 500 seasons mean nothing. Our paper from government means everything.'" He paused. "We do not ask for all our land back. We know this is not possible. We ask only for sacred places, places where our fathers and grandfathers rest. Is this too much?" The silence that followed was profound. Sarah saw shame on many faces, not everyone's, but enough. A rancher named Tom Peterson stood. "Chief Cochilo, I got a question. If we give you the mountain, how do we know there won't be more demands? How do we know you won't use it as a base to raid our settlements?" "Because we give our word," Cochilo replied. "And because my son married one of your women. My grandchildren, when they come, will have white blood and Apache blood. You think I want them to grow up in world of war? I want peace, but peace built on truth and respect, not on lies and theft." Another voice, a woman Sarah didn't recognize. "Mrs. Dakota, you're white. How can you side with the Apache over your own people?" Sarah stood again, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes on her. "Because my own people means the people who treat me with dignity and respect. It means the people who see my worth, who value truth over profit, who understand that being civilized means honoring your promises. The Apache welcomed me when my white family used me as a pawn. They taught me, protected me, accepted me. So yes, I side with them. Not because of their skin color, but because of their character. She let her gaze sweep across the crowd. Every one of you needs to ask yourselves, what kind of people do we want to be? The kind who breaks promises and steals sacred land for silver? Or the kind who honors our word, even when it's hard? Because right now, the Apache have shown more honor than most of us have. More silence. Then, slowly, Tom Peterson stood again. I reckon she's right. I ain't happy about losing potential mining profits, but I'd be less happy knowing my wealth came from breaking faith with people who tried to make peace. I vote we support Colonel Warren's decision. Other voices joined his, not all, not even most, but enough to matter. A contingent of decent people who were willing to choose integrity over easy money. The meeting continued for hours, with arguments on both sides, but eventually a compromise was reached. The Mountain of Spirits would be protected Apache land. In exchange, the Apache would agree to clearly defined boundaries for their hunting grounds and would work with local ranchers to prevent conflicts over cattle and water rights. A permanent liaison position would be created, half the year in Redemption Creek, half with the Apache, to help resolve disputes before they escalated to violence. And Sarah was offered the position. You speak both languages now, Colonel Warren said. You understand both cultures. You've proven yourself trustworthy to both sides. You're the logical choice. Sarah looked at Dakota, who nodded his encouragement. It is good work, he said. Important work. And we do it together. Together, Sarah agreed and accepted. 6 months later, Sarah sat at her desk in the newly built liaison office, a small structure erected exactly at the midpoint between Redemption Creek and the Apache camp. The symbolism wasn't subtle, but it worked. She was writing in her journal, as she did every evening, documenting the day's events. Today had been challenging, a dispute between a rancher and Apache hunters over a killed cow. Both sides were angry. Both sides felt justified, and it had taken hours of patient negotiation to reach a solution. The Apache would pay restitution for the cow, but the rancher would agree to mark his cattle more clearly and keep them away from traditional Apache hunting trails. Small victories. That's what her life had become. Small victories that, piece by piece, built trust between two communities that had every reason to hate each other. You are tired, Dakota said, entering with 2 cups of herbal tea. He set one beside her journal and kept the other for himself. Exhausted, Sarah admitted, but it's good work, important work. Yes, and you are good at it. Dakota sat beside her, his presence solid and comforting. The elders speak well of you. They say you are fair, that you listen to all sides before making judgment. This is high praise. Sarah smiled. What about the townspeople? What do they say? Some still hate you. Some respect you. Most are learning that peaceful coexistence is more profitable than constant conflict. He shrugged. It is slow. Change. But it is change. Sarah set down her pen and turned to face him. Dakota, there's something I need to tell you. His expression grew alert. What is wrong? Nothing's wrong. At least I don't think so. She took his hand and placed it on her belly. I'm pregnant. Dakota's eyes widened. For a moment, he was utterly still. Then his face broke into the widest smile Sarah had ever seen on him. A child? We are having a child. Yes. Lozen confirmed it yesterday. She says I'm about 2 months along. Dakota let out a whoop of joy and pulled Sarah into his arms, spinning her around until she laughed and begged him to stop before she got dizzy. When he finally set her down, his eyes were bright with tears. A child who will walk in both worlds, he whispered. A child who will carry the best of both peoples. This is everything. Are you scared? Sarah asked. I'm terrified. What kind of world are we bringing this child into? Will they be accepted by the Apache? By the whites? Will they always feel caught between two worlds? Perhaps, Dakota said thoughtfully. But perhaps they will be exactly what both worlds need. Someone who can see from both sides, who can build more bridges, and they will not be alone. There will be more marriages like ours, more children of two peoples. Our child will be first, but not only. He was right. Already, 2 more marriages had been arranged between the Apache and townspeople, not forced alliances, but genuine relationships that had developed as the two communities learned to coexist. Change was happening, slowly but steadily. That night, as Sarah lay in Dakota's arms, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. From unwanted stepdaughter to Apache wife, from frightened girl to confident liaison, from invisible to truly sane. It had been a transformation she never could have imagined. She thought about the journal entry she'd written on her wedding night, about being seen as the greatest gift one person could give another. She still believed that. But now she understood something more. Being seen wasn't just about being recognized. It was about being valued, honored, protected, and loved for exactly who you were. Dakota, she whispered into the darkness. Yes? Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for the gift that silenced the whole town. Not the desk or the stories, but the act of truly valuing another person's humanity. She felt him smile against her hair. You are easy to see, Sarah. You burn bright like fire. I just had to look. As Sarah's pregnancy progressed, the liaison office became a different kind of bridge, a place where Apache women would come to share their wisdom about childbirth and child rearing, and where white women, cautiously at first, would come to learn from them. Lozen appointed herself as Sarah's primary caretaker, much to the old warrior woman's grumbling. I have killed enemies in battle, she complained. I have tracked raiders across desert for days. Now I'm nursemaid to pregnant white girl. How times change. But despite her complaints, Lozen was fiercely protective of Sarah. She prepared special teas to ease morning sickness, taught her exercises to strengthen her body for birth, and told her stories about Apache women who had birthed children strong enough to become great leaders. Pain is part of birth, Lozen said one afternoon as they sat together weaving baskets, a task Sarah had finally mastered after months of practice. But pain has purpose. It opens body, opens mother's heart, makes room for love bigger than anything else in the world. White women, they fear pain too much. They fight it. Apache women, we work with pain. We know it is temporary, but child is forever. Mrs. Henderson also visited frequently, bringing supplies from town and news of how the liaison arrangement was working from the townspeople's perspective. Disputes are down 60%, she reported one day. Tom Peterson says he's actually making more money now that he doesn't have to worry about livestock theft or property damage. And the Apache have been trading surplus venison for flour and cloth. It's working, Sarah. What you're building here, it's actually working. But not everyone was happy. There were still those who resented the peace, who wanted the Apache driven out entirely. Threats were made, warning letters left at the liaison office. Dakota increased security, ensuring Sarah was never alone. The worst incident came in Sarah's 7th month. She was returning from a meeting in town when gunfire erupted. Dakota threw her behind a rock formation as bullets whined overhead. Stay down, he commanded, drawing his own rifle. The attack lasted only minutes, 3 men firing from ambush before Dakota's return fire and the arrival of Apache warriors drove them off. But Sarah had seen one of the attackers' faces before they fled. It was one of Silas's former mining partners, a man named Dutch Keller, who had lost his investment when the claims were invalidated. This won't end, Sarah said shakily as Dakota checked her for injuries. As long as people like Keller think they can profit from war, they'll try to sabotage peace. Then we must make peace more profitable than war, Dakota replied, and we must catch those who attack and make sure they are punished. Not with Apache justice or white justice, but with justice both sides agree is fair. It was Colonel Warren who proposed the solution, a joint tribunal, 3 white citizens, 3 Apache elders, and Sarah as the neutral 7th voice. Any crimes affecting both communities would be tried by this tribunal, with punishments agreed upon by both cultures. Dutch Keller and his accomplices were the first to face this new justice. They were convicted of attempted murder and sentenced to 5 years of labor, helping to build new structures for both the town and the Apache camp. Literal bridge building as punishment for trying to burn down the metaphorical one. It's not perfect, Warren admitted to Sarah, but it's a start, a way to show that laws apply to everyone, that no one is above accountability. Sarah's labor began on a cold February morning, earlier than expected. Lozen was there immediately, along with Nalnish and 2 other Apache midwives. Mrs. Henderson arrived within the hour, having been alerted by a rider. "Should we send for a doctor?" Mrs. Henderson asked nervously. "Apache women birth children for 1,000 years without doctors," Lozen said firmly. "Sarah is strong. Baby is strong. We help." The labor was long and difficult. As the hours stretched from morning into afternoon and then into evening, Sarah understood what Lozen had meant about pain with purpose. Every contraction was agony, but it was also progress, the necessary process of bringing new life into the world. Dakota stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, whispering encouragement in both English and Apache. Once, during a particularly brutal contraction, Sarah gripped his hand so hard she thought she might break it. "I can't do this," she gasped. "Yes, you can," Dakota said fiercely. "You are strongest woman I know. You faced down Thomas Wardle with knife. You challenged your own people for justice. You build peace from nothing but determination and hope. You can do this." "He's right," Lozen added. "I see many women give birth. You have strength needed. Trust your body. Trust us. Trust yourself." As night fell, Sarah felt the urge to push. Lozen positioned her into a squatting position, supported by Nalnish and Mrs. Henderson. "Now," Lozen commanded. "When next pain comes, you push with all your strength." Sarah pushed, and pushed, and pushed until she thought she would split in 2. The pain was beyond anything she'd ever imagined, a white-hot fire that consumed her entire being. Then, suddenly, relief, a rush of sensation, and a cry, not her cry, but a baby's cry, strong and indignant, and absolutely perfectly alive. "A daughter," Lozen announced, placing the squalling infant on Sarah's chest. "A healthy, strong daughter." Sarah looked down at the tiny red-faced baby, her daughter, and felt her heart expand until it hurt almost as much as the birth had. The baby had a shock of dark hair, Dakota's high cheekbones, and when she opened her eyes, they were the same cornflower blue as Sarah's own. "She's perfect," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. Dakota knelt beside them, his own cheeks wet. "She is Bridge," he said softly. "Look at her, Apache and white, all in one perfect child. She is hope made flesh." Lozen, never one for sentimentality, still seemed moved. "What will you name her?" "She needs Apache name and white name." Sarah and Dakota had discussed this. "Elizabeth," Sarah said, "after my mother, and Kyalin," Dakota finished. "It means willow tree, flexible but strong, able to bend in wind without breaking. Elizabeth Kyalin, Dakota." "It's perfect," Mrs. Henderson said, wiping her own eyes. "She's perfect. And look at her. She's going to be beautiful. She's got the best of both of you." As word of the birth spread, people came from both communities bearing gifts. Apache women brought carefully crafted cradle boards and tiny moccasins. Townswomen brought blankets and little dresses. Chief Cochilo presented his granddaughter with a ceremonial blessing and a necklace of turquoise and silver that had belonged to Dakota's mother. Even some of the more resistant townspeople seemed softened by the baby. It was hard to hate when you were looking at an innocent child. Harder still to deny someone's humanity when they were cooing over their grandchild. Beatrice and Silas, of course, were absent, still in Santa Fe awaiting trial. Cordelia and Margaret had returned east, wanting nothing to do with their infamous stepsister. But Sarah found she didn't miss them. Her real family was here. Dakota, Chief Cochilo, Lozen, Nalnish, Mrs. Henderson, Colonel Warren, and all the others who had chosen to see past differences to build something new. 2 years later, Sarah sat at her desk in the liaison office, which had grown into a much larger operation. There were now 3 full-time staff members helping with translations, dispute resolution, and trade coordination. The Joint Tribunal had heard 47 cases and had a conviction rate that was respected by both communities. Elizabeth, or Kaylin, as the Apache called her, was a bright, energetic toddler who switched effortlessly between English and Apache, who played with white children and Apache children with equal enthusiasm, and who had wrapped everyone from her grandfather the chief to Colonel Warren around her tiny finger. Sarah was writing her weekly report when Dakota entered with news. "Territorial governor is coming," he announced. 3 weeks. He wants to see the liaison program, meet with tribal leaders, and discuss expanding the model to other regions. Sarah's heart raced. Other regions? You mean? He wants to create similar programs across the territory. Apache, Navajo, Pueblo, all tribes. He says our success here proves that coexistence is possible, that peace is more profitable than war. It was everything they'd worked for, and yet Sarah felt a flutter of anxiety. Will it work elsewhere? We got lucky here. We had Colonel Warren, who was fair. We had Chief Cochulo, who valued peace. We had enough decent people on both sides willing to try. What if other places don't have that? Then we teach them, Dakota said simply. We share what we learned. We show them that seeing each other as human is first step to everything else. The governor's visit was a whirlwind of meetings, tours, and diplomatic dinners. Governor Mitchell was a pragmatic man who cared more about results than ideology, and the results spoke for themselves. Reduced violence, increased trade, growing cooperation, and a model for peaceful coexistence that was attracting attention from as far away as Washington, D.C. On his final evening, the governor asked Sarah and Dakota to join him for a private conversation. "I'm going to be direct," Mitchell said. "I want to appoint you both as special territorial liaisons. You'd oversee the creation and management of similar programs across New Mexico and Arizona territories. It would mean more travel, more responsibility, and probably more danger. There are a lot of people who profit from conflict and won't be happy to see peace breaking out." Sarah and Dakota exchanged glances. They had built a good life here. Elizabeth was happy, thriving. Did they want to risk all that? "Can we think about it?" Sarah asked. "Of course. Take a month. But I hope you'll accept. What you've built here, it's more than just a program. It's a new way of thinking about how different peoples can coexist. That's worth spreading." That night, Sarah and Dakota walked under the stars, Elizabeth asleep in a cradleboard on her father's back. "What do you think?" Sarah asked. "I think it is bigger work than we imagined we would do," Dakota replied thoughtfully. "I think it is important work, but I also think it will take us away from home, put us in danger, cost us peace we have built. So we shouldn't do it?" "I did not say that," Dakota smiled. "I say only that there is cost. But if we do not do it, if we do not share what we learned, others will suffer who might have been helped. Apache and other places will face same betrayals we faced. White settlers in other places will never learn to see natives as human. Children like our Kylan will grow up in world of war instead of world of peace." Sarah knew he was right. They had been given a gift, the gift of understanding, of seeing across cultural divides, of building bridges, and gifts came with responsibilities. "We do it," she decided, "but we do it our way. We bring Kylie with us. We make sure she grows up knowing she's part of something important, that her existence as a child of 2 worlds matters, and we make sure that wherever we go, we tell the truth about what happened here. The betrayals, the courage, the small victories that added up to real change." "Agreed," Dakota said. "We tell true story, not the legend white people want to hear about noble savage and civilizing white woman. Not the story Apache want to hear about evil whites and perfect natives. The real story of flawed people on both sides choosing to be better." Over the next decade, Sarah and Dakota traveled extensively, establishing liaison programs in dozens of communities. Some were successful, others failed. torn apart by old hatreds and new betrayals. But slowly, steadily, the model spread. Sarah continued writing in her journal throughout it all, documenting everything: successes and failures, joys and heartbreaks, wisdom and mistakes. She wrote about the young Apache warrior who became best friends with a white rancher's son, about the white woman who learned traditional weaving and ended up teaching it to both Apache and white children, about the conflicts that couldn't be resolved peacefully and the violence that still erupted despite everyone's best efforts. She wrote truth, always truth, knowing that someday these words might matter. Elizabeth grew into a remarkable young woman, confident, bilingual, equally comfortable at tribal councils and town meetings. She inherited her father's strength and her mother's fierce sense of justice, and she burned with determination to continue their work. When Sarah was 35 years old, pregnant with her third child, she and Dakota also had a son, James, named for Sarah's father. A letter arrived from Washington, D.C. It was from the newly created Bureau of Indian Affairs, requesting that Sarah's journals be submitted for consideration in developing national policy on tribal relations. Someone had heard about the Redemption Creek Liaison Program and wanted to study how it worked. "They want to learn from us," Sarah said, stunned. "Of course they do," Lozen said. The old warrior woman was ancient now, her face a map of deep wrinkles, but her mind was still sharp. "You build something good here, something that works. Smart people pay attention to what works." Sarah spent months preparing her journals for submission, editing and organizing years of entries into a coherent narrative. She included everything: the early struggles, the betrayals, the small victories, the ongoing challenges. She ended with this entry: "After all these years, people still ask me, was it worth it? Worth marrying a man I barely knew? Worth choosing a path that alienated me from my own people? Worth the danger, the difficulty, the constant struggle to bridge two worlds that often don't want to be bridged?" My answer is always the same. Look at my children. Elizabeth is becoming a leader in both communities, carrying forward the work we started. James speaks 4 languages and dreams of traveling to other territories to teach what he's learned here. The baby I carry will be born into a world where intermarriage between Apache and whites is not scandalous, but increasingly common. Look at Redemption Creek and the Apache camp. Once, they were enemies. Now, they are neighbors who trade, who help each other during hard times, who attend each other's celebrations and mourn each other's losses. Not perfectly, there are still tensions, still prejudices, still conflicts. But they see each other as human now. That matters. Look at the dozens of liaison programs across the territory, each one a small light pushing back against darkness of hatred and fear. Was it worth it? Every moment of struggle, every act of courage, every small victory that built into something larger. Yes, it was worth it, because I learned something that changed my life. Being seen, truly seen and valued for who you are, is a gift beyond price. And once you've been given that gift, you have a responsibility to see others in return, to help them feel less invisible, less alone. That's what my husband did for me on our wedding day with his gift that silenced the whole town. He saw me. And in seeing me, he showed everyone else how to see too. That's the bridge we've been building all these years, not just between Apache and white, but between every person who feels unseen and the community that needs to learn how to look deeper, past surface differences to the humanity beneath. It's hard work. It will never be finished, but it's the most important work there is. Sarah Dakota, June 15th, 1884, Redemption Creek, Arizona Territory. The old woman sat on the porch of the liaison office, watching the sun set over the mountains. Sarah was 54 now, her wheat-colored hair streaked with silver, her face lined with years of laughter and tears, hard work and harder lessons learned. Beside her sat Dakota, his own hair more grey than black now, the scar on his face softened by age but still visible, a reminder of the violence that had shaped his early life and the peace he'd spent his later years building. They watched as their grandson, Elizabeth's son, played with a group of children in the yard, Apache and white and mixed, all of them oblivious to the boundaries that had once seemed so insurmountable. "You ever regret it?" Dakota asked, as he sometimes did. "Never," Sarah replied, as she always did. "You?" "Never." He took her hand, his calloused palm familiar against hers. "You gave me everything. Partnership, love, children, purpose. You saw me when I was just savage to most whites. You chose to understand rather than fear." "You did the same for me," Sarah reminded him. "I was nobody, unwanted, invisible, a burden to my own family. You saw worth in me that no one else had bothered to look for." They sat in comfortable silence, as they so often did after decades of marriage. They'd grown old together, built something remarkable together, weathered countless storms together. A young couple approached, a white man and an Apache woman who had come seeking Sarah's advice on marriage. They were the fourth such couple this month. Intermarriage was becoming common now, almost ordinary. Sarah smiled, thinking of how scandalous her own marriage had been. Now, barely a generation later, it was simply one option among many. That was progress. Slow, hard-won, imperfect, but real. After the couple left, Elizabeth arrived with her children. She was 32 now, serving as chief liaison for the entire territory, carrying forward the work her parents had started. "Mother, father," she greeted them in Apache, then switched to English. "The governor's office sent word. They're commissioning a monument to the original Redemption Creek peace agreement. They want to place it at the exact spot where the wedding took place." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "A monument? To commemorate what you built here? What you showed was possible?" Elizabeth hugged her mother. "They're calling it the Bridge of Two Peoples. There will be an inscription from your journals about being seen and seeing others." That night, Sarah opened her journal, the same leather-bound book Dakota had given her on their wedding day, now filled with years of entries, the leather worn soft from handling. She wrote her final entry. "Today, they told me they're building a monument to our marriage, to the peace we helped create. It seems impossible that two frightened young people agreeing to marry could have sparked something that would grow into a movement across the territory. But maybe that's how all great change starts. Not with grand gestures, but with small acts of courage. With one person choosing to truly see another person. With two people deciding to build a bridge instead of a wall. I'm old now. Tired. My body aches. And I know I don't have many years left. But when I look at what we've built, the programs, the relationships, the children who live easily in both worlds, I feel only gratitude. To Dakota, who saw me when I was invisible, to the Apache people who welcomed me as daughter and sister, to the townspeople who chose courage over fear, justice over profit, to everyone who chose to see humanity instead of difference. This is my last journal entry. I'm giving this book to Elizabeth so she can continue the story. But if anyone reads these words years from now, I want you to know, you have the power to see others truly. You have the power to build bridges. You have the power to choose understanding over hatred, compassion over indifference. It won't be easy. It will cost you something. But it will also give you everything that matters: connection, purpose, love, and the knowledge that you made the world a little better than you found it. That's enough. That's everything. Look for the invisible people in your life. See them. Value them. Build bridges to them. That's how you change the world. One person at a time, one act of seeing at a time. Sarah Catherine Murphy, Dakota, daughter of two peoples, bridge builder, mother, wife, grandmother. And once, long ago, a scared young girl who chose courage over comfort and found herself in the choosing. The story of Sarah and Dakota reminds us that the greatest gift we can give another person is to truly see them, to look past surface differences and recognize the humanity, worth, and dignity in every individual. In our modern world, we are surrounded by invisible people, the homeless person we pass on the street, the service worker we barely acknowledge, the immigrant whose story we never ask to hear, the person of a different race or religion we view through the lens of prejudice rather than understanding. The moral of this story is simple but profound. Everyone wants to be seen. Everyone deserves to be seen. And when we take the time to truly see each other, past skin color, past cultural differences, past our own prejudices and fears, we build bridges that can change the world. Sarah's story challenges us to ask ourselves, who in my life do I make invisible? Who have I judged without truly knowing their story? What bridges could I build if I chose courage over comfort? How many opportunities for connection have I missed because I was too afraid to see past differences? In honor of Sarah and Dakota's legacy, I challenge you to do one thing this week. Truly see someone. Not just look at them, but see them. Ask their story. Learn their name. Recognize their humanity. Whether it's someone of a different race, religion, background, or simply someone you've walked past 100 times without acknowledging, take the time to see them. Because every great change in human history started with someone deciding to see what others chose to ignore. Every bridge was built by someone willing to stand between two worlds. Every act of justice began with someone recognizing another person's humanity. You have that power. Use it. Thank you for reading. Thank you for seeing. Thank you for being here. Now go build some bridges. If you enjoy this story, hit the subscribe button to get notified anything we post a new story.